Welcome to the Genealogy Professional Podcast, the resource for transitional and experienced genealogists who want to create a successful business. I'm your host, Marion Pierre-Louis. Here you'll learn from professionals all around the world who work in the field of genealogy. Are you ready to learn and grow together? Then let's get started. This podcast is sponsored in part by the Association of Professional Genealogists. You can find out more about them at www.apgen.org. Welcome to Episode 6 of the Genealogy Professional Podcast. Today we head north to get to know Canadian genealogist Kathryn Lake Hogan. Kathryn, welcome to the Genealogy Professional Podcast.
Hi, Marianne. Delighted to be here.
Let's get started by having you tell us about yourself and to give us an overview of your genealogy business.
Okay. I'm Canadian, born, raised in Canada. I've lived pretty much in the same city, which is Windsor, Ontario, almost all my life. My business is called Looking for Ancestors, and I started that in 2007. And I do research, lecturing, speaking. I'm an author and an educator. And my specialty is focusing on Canadian family history.
What inspired you to become a genealogy professional?
I started 16 years ago researching my own family history and, got the genealogy bug, loved it. I had children staying at home with me, and I wanted something to do. So I started researching family history. Then I learned that there were courses about family history. And I went, wow, that's amazing. And the National Institute of Genealogical Studies offered courses that I could take online, which was really convenient. And so I started taking some courses. Then they offered an English program and a Canadian program. So I signed up and started taking those and really liked it. And I thought, you know what, maybe this is something I can do at home as a job when my younger child starts grade 1. So that was the plan. But sometimes that doesn't always work out according to plan. So that's what actually sparked my interest is all of that.
Now, many genealogists come to the profession from something else. Did you have time beforehand to work at any other jobs or any other career?
Yes, I was an early childhood educator. I looked after other people's children for about 9 years. I worked in a daycare. I worked with toddlers and school-age children up to age 12 in a school-based daycare setting. And then when I had my older son, shortly after I had him, I quit and then stayed home to be a full-time stay-at-home mom. Now, you've told us about some of your educational background for becoming a genealogist. What sorts of steps did you take to prepare yourself for the business side of a genealogy business? That I didn't prepare myself too well for. I actually had to do research and learn the business aspects of my genealogy business as I went along. I didn't have any business courses in my background. So, the first thing I did is I signed up for the Association of Professional Genealogists and read their information, and I read their quarterly magazine. And then I actually went out and bought a business book. I think it was called Canadian Business for Dummies, and started reading that and just how to run a business, a small home-based business. And so it's just been a learning process, learning how to do that business aspect of it. And the other thing I did is I joined the ProGen Study Group, which was an 18-month commitment, but it was learning how to do a combination of the genealogy as well as the business aspect of it as well. And it was a good, interactive group to be a part of. You got feedback from your peers, and it was nice to have somebody to sound off on those ideas. Is my vision what I think it is? Does it sound right? It sounds great in my brain, but how does that translate to other people? So having that feedback was very important. All right, this is great. I want to dig into this a little bit deeper, if that's okay. Sure.
Can you tell me one or two specific things that you took away from the ProGen class that really helped you?
I think for me, the biggest thing was the peer-to-peer interaction. We met once a month, and we had questions we talked about, and we critiqued each other's assignments. We had monthly assignments to do that followed the chapters in the ProGen book, the professional genealogy book, and you were assigned 2 or 3 other people that you critiqued, and then 2 or 3 other people would critique your work. And so you got positive, and I wouldn't say so much negative, but you got some good critical feedback from other people in the genealogy business who are trying to do the same thing you're doing, which is having a family history genealogy professional business. And so it was a safe environment. Nobody was overly critical, but you got honest to goodness feedback. What was working? What didn't work? Have you thought about trying this? Have you thought about trying that? What you have here is good, but, I'm not understanding it. Can you give me a little bit more? All of that was involved, and it was just a very helpful experience for me, having that peer-to-peer interaction. The courses that I had taken through NIGS, even though they were online, you didn't have live person-to-person contact. You didn't get a lot of feedback from your other classmates. So that was the biggest thing for me with ProGen, is having that peer-to-peer contact.
And you mentioned APG helped you. Give me one example of something that's helped your business from APG.
Oh, definitely attending, even if it's virtually, the professional management conferences. I think they're once or twice a year. And I've attended a couple of those in person, and I'm hoping to attend the upcoming one in January. I think it's just in a couple weeks, that's being offered virtually. And having that professional aspect of the business through those workshops has been very helpful. And then, of course, the APG Quarterly Magazine, fantastic articles in the magazine, and I'm constantly reading through those. Learning from other professionals about how to run their business.
Great. And just the last example, you had said that you had bought a book about starting a home business in Canada. Give me one example about how that got you on the right track.
Oh, well, it's learning about the tax. We have taxes, lots of taxes in Canada, but just understanding what I'm supposed to be charging for, what I'm not supposed to be charging for, what I'm supposed to be taxing, what I'm not supposed to be taxing. It's just, the hands-on business aspect of any small base business in Canada, and having that as a resource when I don't know an answer to a question, having that book there and being able to look that up and figuring out what I'm supposed to be doing.
What skills did you bring to your business when you got started, and how have they helped you?
I think the 2 biggest skills that I brought to my business are creativity. Well, actually, I wouldn't even say creativity. I would say initiative and perseverance. And the initiative is getting out of that comfort zone and approaching societies and individuals and telling them what I had to offer. And that was hard because when I first started, nobody knew me at all. And I had to ask people, please take a chance on me, take a risk on me. And this is what I have to offer. And fortunately, people did that. And the other thing is the perseverance, because you're going to hear a lot of no's. And you have to sometimes not take it so personally. When I'm answering a call for papers and I get the rejection letter, it's, maybe what I had to offer wasn't a fit for what the society was offering. There was only so many, 60 spaces available and 500 speakers applied. There's only so many people that can get those places. So having a thick skin and just being persistent and persevering and just keep on going.
Wow, those are really, really good examples. And I also love your example about rejections from conferences. And so I just want to stop for a minute and just kind of mention to the audience that when you do apply to a conference, there's a whole lot of stuff that goes into selecting a speaker behind the scenes. And how they pick the speakers that will attend the conference has a lot more to do with the whole organization of the conference than necessarily just your talk. You could have the most phenomenal talk, but for some reason they're not able to pick it. So I think that Kathryn really has the right idea. You should never take that personally because there's so many other factors that go into selecting speakers besides just who the speaker is and what their topic is. So I think you've got a really great attitude about that, Kathryn. So I think that served you really well.
Thanks.
What are some of the skills that you lacked when you started your business? And you had talked a little bit, you gave us some examples of how you overcame that with APG and the business book and stuff, but given a specific example of a skill that you lacked and what you did to overcome it.
Time management, that was the biggest one. My children were young when I first started, so trying to organize time for them, home life, and time for work was a big problem. And I found that I had to actually schedule time in my calendar to do that and block off specific chunks of time where all I'm doing is doing work, whether that's research or presentations or whatever, and I'm not focusing on getting the laundry out of the washing machine and into the dryer and what I'm going to make for supper that night. So having those blocks of time and knowing that that's all I'm going to focus on is my work has been very helpful, and I'm far more productive when I have that scheduled right on my calendar. And I know, from 10 to noon, I have 2 hours to work on that, great. Then at noon, it's lunchtime. I can deal with lunchtime. Back at 1 o'clock, I can have another hour or two to work on work. And so it's even though my day's broken up that way, it works well for me.
I'm curious, did you figure this out kind of all at once and then implement it, or is it something that you've slowly figured out over the years?
Oh, it's definitely a progression. It's a slowly over the years kind of thing. And I think part of it is with my children having gotten older and being in school full time. I wouldn't say so much that it's necessarily I have more time to myself. It's different. Their activities are different. So the way I manage my time is a little bit different because of that.
What was the hardest part about starting your genealogy business?
Oh, doubting myself. Can I do this? Can I really do this? No, I don't think I can do this. And having that little argument in my head about, yes, you can, no, you can't. And it's getting over that self-doubt. And I think just, being brave about it and say, yeah, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to try this anyway and just do it. Because even if it doesn't work out the way you thought it was, you're still going to learn something. And you're still going to grow as a professional. And so I thought, you know what? I really didn't have anything to lose. So I'm going to go for it. And once I got over that doubt and worried about myself being able to do it, then things went much more smoothly. And I was able to concentrate on how to set up my business and what I was going to focus on. And that's not to say that there's still moments when I have, I still have self-doubt every now and again. I think that's normal. But just overcoming that initial self-doubt block, I would have to say, hurdle, that's what I'm looking for, hurdle. Once you get past that, I think you're well on your way to making your business work for you. Can you share a story of an obstacle that you encountered early in your career and how you worked around it? An obstacle in my career. I think the biggest obstacle was being recognized in the genealogy community as a professional, specializing in Canadian family history and being recognized for having that knowledge. And that was just a time thing, consistently working at it and networking with people and getting a little bit known, as I guess maybe the go-to person for Canadian family history. And that was an obstacle for me because I knew I had the knowledge. I just had problems letting other people know that I had the knowledge and was willing to share it through my business. Now, do you differentiate between people recognizing you as the Canadian genealogist
from the American point of view, Americans recognizing you as a Canadian genealogist, or Canadian genealogists recognizing you as a go-to Canadian genealogist?
The funny thing is, I think I'm more recognized in the United States as the Canadian genealogist than I am in Canada. And I don't know why that is. Maybe it's because I live close to the U.S. border, but that's my perception. I don't know if that's accurate. But my perception is that I am more recognized in the United States as being the Canadian genealogist than I am in Canada.
Well, I mean, it really, I think it comes down to who your target audience is, not your target audience, your target clients, and also, who are you networking with? If you're actively involved with APG and you're crossing the border a lot, it might seem natural that you would be. There's no right or wrong for this. I was just curious, about your perception of it and if you had actively worked towards something. But I think it's great either way.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm trying to build up more of a presence in Canada because I kind of like to be, both the U.S. and in Canada recognized as a Canadian specialist in family history.
I know that we've got Mooreshead Publishing magazines, Internet Genealogy. Mooreshead Magazine is a Canadian publisher, but their audience is kind of split between the U.S. and Canada.
Yes.
Are there any genealogy publications that are just geared towards Canada?
As a country, I don't know of a specific genealogy or family history magazine or publication, nationwide. The one that we have in Ontario is through the Ontario Genealogical Studies, and that's the biggest family history society in Canada. And they do put out a publication. I think it's quarterly publication, and the articles in that are geared to Canadian family history and in particular Ontario. With regard to Mooreshead Publishing, it's funny that you mentioned that. I did have a conversation with them a number of years ago at a conference, and I asked them about that because they are based in Canada, but the readership is more in the United States, so they had to balance that, with having more U.S. and more general-based genealogy-type articles, family history articles, than having the Canadian ones. But you still will see a Canadian article, here and there in their publications.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's not surprising, really, that you say you're more recognized in the United States because they have the communication vehicles for showcasing somebody with Canadian research. It sounds like it would be harder to be a Canadian researcher, whatever your specialty is, and to get that national presence just because you don't have specific Canadian publications.
Right.
Something for some entrepreneur in Canada to start up. So tell us about that moment in your business when everything started to come together and you became really confident about where you were heading.
I think that happened about 2.5 years ago. Things started coming together. I was getting a few more research clients, and I was getting more speaking engagements, which is something that I really like doing. I thought it about 2.5 years ago. Things just started coming together. People would approach me, and their requests were more specific. It wasn't such a generalized request anymore. It was more specific to the areas that I'm researching, to the areas that I was knowledgeable about.
Have the services that you've offered when you first started changed as the years have gone by? Maybe your services were more broad when you first started and now they're more specific, or maybe the opposite. How have your service offerings changed over the years?
When I first started, it was pretty, generalized family history. If I thought I could take on that research project, I would. And even if it wasn't necessarily Canadian, it was, US-based type of thing, I would do it. Now, not so much. I'm more specific to Canadian family history, and I'm starting to move away from the research aspect of it and more to the teaching and speaking aspect of the business, and doing more presentations and more webinars that are specifically about Canadian family history.
What unique services do you offer that makes you different from other genealogists?
I think because I grew up in a cross-border community and I've lived here almost all my life, what's unique is that I have that understanding of, I guess, that community that we have as a cross-border community and how our ancestors would have crossed back and forth across the Canadian-U.S. border. So I think when people get stuck and they don't know where to look for their ancestors, I do. And so I hope that's something unique about my business. I don't know I guess it's hard to describe if you don't live in a cross-border community. So those of you who live in a cross-border community, I hope you understand what I'm talking about. But yeah, so I have an understanding of, just not only the Canadian family history, but also some of the Michigan, Ohio, Illinois family history. Not a lot, but a little bit. And so, when you have ancestors crossing that international border between the U.S. and Canada, I kind of sometimes, I don't say most of the time know where to look. Sometimes I get stuck, but most of the times I have some ideas of where to look for those ancestors.
I think that would be a really helpful and unique aspect of your business, that you have that awareness of what it's like for going across the borders. I think that would be extremely helpful, especially since there is so much border crossing between the U.S. and Canada historically. So I'm with you on that one. What has been the most challenging aspect of being a genealogy professional from a business point of view?
I think it's the actual business part of it. The researching and preparing presentations and all that is fun for me. That's something I really like to do. What I don't like doing is bookkeeping. I really don't like bookkeeping. And just, filing, all that, business type of stuff is challenging for me because I don't like doing it. And I sometimes procrastinate. So, that's something I actually have to schedule in on my calendar and block in a chunk of time to get it done so that it does get done.
Many genealogists offer a wide array of services, such as writing, speaking, which you've mentioned that you like to do, and client reports. How did you determine what services that you wanted to offer to grow your business?
Well, initially, I started out just having the genealogy research business. And then, those who know me know that I like to talk, and I like to talk about family history. So then it started moving towards the speaking engagements, presentations, lectures, webinars, workshops, that type of thing. And then it was a mix. The last couple of years have been a mix of the research aspect of the business and the speaking aspect of the business. And now I'm finding I want to focus more on the teaching and speaking aspect of it. And I think that's my aim for this year in 2014 is to move move further away from the research for clients and more towards the speaking and lecturing and workshop aspect.
How do you balance paid work versus volunteering?
Good question. I would have to say carefully. I think volunteer work, your volunteer work should be gratifying to you. And if it's not, then, I think it's time to let that aspect go. Saying no is a big thing. I know many organizations have a lack of volunteers, so the same people keep taking things on. When your volunteer work starts to impede and interfere with your professional work, if you're spending more time on your volunteer work than your professional work, then I think that's a problem. So I think the big thing is learning how to say no and knowing when to give something up when you're no longer interested in it and you're not getting any satisfaction from it.
Now you have children, like I have small children. Do you select volunteer positions that happen outside within the community, or do you try to do things that you can do online?
It's a combination of both. For 6 years, I was the genealogist for our local branch of the United Empire Loyalists Association of Canada. So we had meetings throughout the year where I have to attend, but that wasn't so demanding on my time being outside the house. I was able to do most of it from home, and the interaction with people was online. So that made it very doable for me, having a young family and being able to have my business and doing the volunteer work.
And tell me, just because I'm curious, what is the United Empire Loyalists of Canada?
The United Empire Loyalists Association of Canada is the group, the association for those people who are descendants of Loyalists. So the American Revolutionary War, there were Loyalists and Patriots. It's similar to the DAR and the SAR, but you're a descendant of a Loyalist. Or for people who are interested in the Loyalist group. You don't necessarily have to be a descendant to be a part of our group, but there's different levels of membership. So there's people that are proven descendants of the Loyalists, and then we have people that are associate members that are just interested in the Loyalist group.
Do you know, and this is just totally a tangent, do you know if there's a group in England as well that are descendants of soldiers who fought in the Revolution? I'm just curious, because if the Canadians have a group for Loyalists, the Americans have a group for the Patriots, wouldn't it make sense that the Brits would have a group for their folks who went back?
You know, I don't know if there is one in Britain, and the reason I say that is because during the American Revolutionary War, this is one of the things that we have in the Loyalist Association, is that your ancestor could not be a paid military person through England. They couldn't be one of those regulars. They had to be in the militia or some other service to the king, but they could not be I guess for lack of a better word, a career soldier. So there's specific things, requirements that the Loyalists had to meet. So they had to be in the 13 colonies before July 4th, 1776. They had to provide a service to the king. And then they had to be in Canada by a certain date. So there's certain things, certain requirements. So I think for those people that had an ancestor that was in, the British military, because that was their job, I don't think that there is an organization. I could be mistaken. So those of you out there who are, British family history specialists might know better. But I personally don't know of one that's particular to those people that were from Britain at that time.
Yeah, that was a pretty unfair question of me to ask you, really.
That's okay.
But maybe if somebody in the audience knows the answer to that question, please come to the genealogyprofessional.com and please let us know the answer to that question, because that would be really interesting to find out, because I didn't know about this United Empire Loyalist Association of Canada. I've heard lots about Loyalists, but I didn't know there was an actual association, so that's good for me to know. Right, tell us now the most fun project that you've ever worked on that you can actually share with us.
I'd actually have to say, I try to have fun when I go and do presentations. So I'd have to say my most recent speaking engagement in the fall on a society in Michigan was the most fun I've had in a long time. It was a great group of people. We had lots of fun, lots of interaction, and that's what I like, even if it's an online type of presentation, with the questions that come through. It's having fun with it. And having some humor. And so the presentation was lots of fun. And I was talking about place names in my presentation. And I said, Charlotte, Michigan. And then afterwards, the fellow from the society said, and by the way, Kathryn, it's not called Charlotte, Michigan. It's Charlotte, Michigan. So we had a good laugh over that one. But it was lots of fun. And I have to say that's probably the most fun I've had in a while on a project that I've been working on.
That's great. Let's take a quick break to hear a message from the Association of Professional Genealogists.
Hello, this is Kimberly Powell, President-elect of the Association of Professional Genealogists. APG is an international membership organization dedicated to supporting all individuals in the business of genealogy, whether you're an archivist, librarian, educator, writer, or researcher. Our 2,600 members include genealogists at all stages of their professional careers, from those just starting out to some of the field's most renowned leaders. Learn how to grow your business and network with other professionals through our educational webinars, informal mentoring groups, active discussion lists, the APG Quarterly, and our annual Professional Management Conference. Visit us online at apgen.org to learn how we can help you on your professional journey and how you can help us advance public awareness and understanding of the profession of genealogy.
All right, Kathryn, we are about to enter the lightning round, where I'm going to bombard you with a whole bunch of questions, and you are going to come back with brilliant answers that are going to inspire genealogists everywhere. Are you ready?
Yeah. Da, da, da.
All right, let's do it. What was the one thing you were most afraid of in starting your business?
Rejection.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
Carving out a niche for yourself.
What is one specific action listeners can take in the next 24 hours to help them transition into a genealogy career?
Ooh, good one.
Take your time.
You know what? I would say contact a professional genealogist. Ask them a question. Email them. Contact them.
That's a great answer. Do you have a productivity tool like Dropbox that you love and that you can share with our audience?
Oh yeah, definitely Dropbox. Love it. Love it. Love it.
You don't have any others? I gotta stop saying
I have
Dropbox.
I have Google Drive, and I've tried that AirDrop with a Mac, but that got me really confused. So I'm just sticking right now to Google Drive and Dropbox.
What is your preferred social media channel?
That would be Facebook.
Is that for connecting with clients or connecting with colleagues?
That would be with colleagues. With clients, my preferred method of communication is email. Mm-hmm. My least favorite method is telephone because I'm hearing impaired. Mm-hmm. So being able to see what people are saying either through a Skype call or reading what they have to say is helpful to me.
Do you ever do Skype or Google Hangouts with clients?
Actually, not. I do that regularly with colleagues. I haven't actually had a Skype call with a client. Most of the time with clients, it's through email. All
right, here's a hypothetical scenario for you. You have to move across the country to Montreal, and they're very particular in where you live in Montreal about wanting to speak French. And you don't know anyone, and you're not familiar with the research and the record groups in that new location. What are you going to do in the first month to hit the ground running and start a new genealogy business? Now, of course, I just made that up.
Okay. Yeah. Well, first of all, I do have some rudimentary high school French, so bonjour. But, actually what I would actually do, even if I knew I was moving, the first thing I would be doing I'd be on Facebook, and I'd be telling people I'm moving and trying to arrange meeting up with people so that when I moved to Montreal, when I got there, I would know somebody or at least have a contact. And then the next thing I would be doing is scoping out the family history societies in my area, what's available, and making new contacts there. And then after that, it's actually going to the libraries, going to the archives, and learning what's there in that location. And it's you're still going to have some of that knowledge that you had from before, where you lived before, but now you've got to translate that and bring that over to a new place. So you really you can't just sit at home. You got to break out of your box and, meet new people.
Now, here in the United States, we have ancestors from many different countries, like Germany or Sweden or Czechoslovakia, where we have to confront a foreign language. Is it the same in Canada? I mean, my view of Canada is kind of that most Canadians come from the UK, but is that wrong? Do you have a great diversity of ancestor backgrounds of people living in Canada as well?
The answer to that is yes. I live in the fourth most diverse city in Canada. Generally, over time, especially in the early 20th century, we had an influx of people settling out in the western provinces. So we have a lot of Germans, we have a lot of Eastern Europeans. And then in the western province, like British Columbia, we have a lot of Asians from China, Japan, India. So it's the culture in the early 20th century was British because that's what we were ruled for so long. So we had the French were here, then the British, then the French, and the British, and then finally we were British, and we followed those British laws. And so the flavor of Canada for a long time was very British, but our ancestors aren't all British. A lot of them, Eastern European, Russia, Sweden, Denmark, Scandinavian countries. So there's a lot of diversity there.
Do you find with your research that you end up having to cross the pond to one of these countries for your clients?
Actually, you will. I would have to say that the only group overall that you may not have to cross the pond so recently would be either English, and especially if they've come up through the United States, through the 13 colonies as Loyalists, and then French Canadian. Generally, I do say generally, not everybody, if you have French Canadian roots, they're going to be pretty deep in Canada. The other group, so it's going to depend when your ancestor came over, but usually, the late 19th century, early 20th century, is when we had a big influx of immigrants coming into Canada. So if you get back that far, you're going to eventually have to jump back across the pond and find your ancestors in their homeland.
All right. So a lot of people in Canada have early 20th century immigrants?
I wouldn't. Well, it depends. That's
okay.
That's what the essence. It depends.
All right, I'm reading too much into that.
Lineage is. An example is mine. I have a Loyalist lineage. They've been in the New World for 200 years. But some of my other lines have been 20th century. They came over in the 1920s.
Very cool. Give our audience one parting piece of advice and tell us how we can get in contact with you.
One parting piece of advice. I would just say go for it. Whatever it is, whether it's contacting somebody new or if you're wanting to, start your genealogy business, go for it. That would be my big thing. Go for it. And then how do you contact me? I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I have my own website. It's lookingforancestors.com. And that's the word looking, the number 4, ancestors.com. And yeah, I think that's about the easiest way to get a hold of me. And I'm Kathryn Lake Hogan on Facebook and Look for Ancestors on Twitter.
Excellent. Well, Kathryn Lake Hogan, thank you so much for coming on the Genealogy Professional Podcast today.
Thanks, Marion. It's been fun.
I don't know about you, but I learned a whole lot from that discussion with Kathryn Lake Hogan. She brought up a whole bunch of points, many of which were new to me, particularly the aspects of Canadian research that she brought out that I didn't know about before. When I think about an action item that I would like you guys to focus on for this week, I think I want to touch on one particular thing that she said when I asked her about what is unique about her and her business. She talked about understanding the nuances of living in a border crossing community. And that's pretty cool. I mean, when you think about it, I think it's really cool, that whole concept, and the fact that she is familiar with that. I don't live anywhere near border crossing community. I don't know what's involved in the daily lives of people like that. So what I would like you to do this week is to think about what is really unique about your situation. Do you have a geographic identity like Kathryn does with her border crossings? Maybe you live near a lake or a river or an ocean that provides some unique aspect to the research that you do or the services that you provide. Maybe it's not a geographic aspect. Maybe there is some very unique thing about what you do based on the families that founded the area that you live in. Or maybe it has to do with your personal background and where you've chosen to specialize and to research. So this week, I really want you to hone in on what is that thing that is so different and so unique about what you do. And see if you can articulate it as well as Kathryn did, because she did a really good job, I thought, of exploring what that whole border crossing community was about. And see if you can come up with something that is particularly unique to you. You might not have thought about yourself or your services in that way. And this might be a great opportunity for you to stop and consider all different aspects, whether it's geography, physical geography, like a border or a lake or a mountain or a state or whatever, or the history within your town with the founders or ethnic considerations, whatever. So that's what I want you to do. Think about what is completely unique about you. And I'd like you to go to comments at the genealogyprofessional.com and leave me a note and tell me some of the things that you've come up with that make you more unique because of your particular situation than other genealogists across whatever country you're in. All right, well, that's going to be it for this week. So long.